The Argentine economy is doing poorly. Right now, they have one of the highest inflation rates in the world, and more than a decade of economic stagnation and increasing poverty. Javier Milei was elected as the new president of the country just over 100 days ago. He's seen as a savior who will clean up the mess caused by his predecessors. In this video, we investigate whether Milei is keeping his promises and if his radical reforms are actually helping to overcome Argentina's long-standing economic problems. There needs to be quick and drastic change to prevent Argentinians from total collapse. To give you an idea, inflation dramatically sped up, rising from 50% in 2021 to 160% in the 12 months before the elections in November 2023, eroding purchasing power and pushing millions into poverty. This economic turmoil had serious consequences. Businesses struggled to plan amid rapidly changing prices and an unstable currency. Imports became prohibitively expensive, leading to shortages of basic goods. Poverty and inequality soared as real wages failed to keep up with runaway prices. And then there was Javier Milei. A whopping 55.7% of Argentine voters chose Milei as the new president of Argentina. Milei has big plans for the South American country. During his campaign, he outlined three main goals that would form the pillars of his economic recovery plan for Argentina. 1. Javier Milei wants to cut government spending so that there is more profit left over. 2. He wants to dollarize the economy. This means that the American dollar becomes the main currency, replacing the domestic peso. This step aims to stabilize the economy by combating hyperinflation and currency devaluation, and it brings significant changes to monetary policy, including possibly eliminating the central bank's role in determining the currency's value. 3. He wanted to maintain his popularity. This one is interesting, but we will get to why it is so important for Javier soon. How well has Javier performed on these objectives since his presidency began? Let's see. Number 1. One of Milei's top goals was to quickly fix Argentina's messy finances by drastically cutting government spending. In 2022, the budget deficit was reported to be negative 3.85% of GDP, which in monetary terms was approximately $24.27 billion. This indicates that the government spent more than it earned by around $24.27 billion. This chronic overspending fueled big money problems. Prices kept going up, debt kept growing, and many people struggled with poverty. This constant overspending created huge budget deficits that had to be paid for by borrowing or simply printing more pesos, fueling inflation. Milei made a bold promise to slash total government expenditure by a massive 40% within his first year as president. He planned to achieve these spending cuts through several major moves, some of which are to scrape energy subsidies. For a long time, the government has been keeping electricity and gas prices artificially low through subsidies. Milei eliminated these subsidies, allowing prices to rise to market rates. Cut ministries. Argentina had 18 different government ministries overseeing various sectors. Milei aimed to streamline this bloated bureaucracy by reducing the number from 18 to 9. Privatized state companies. The Argentine government owned and operated 34 different companies across industries like energy, transportation, and communications. Milei wanted to sell off or privatize all of these firms to cut costs. Number 2. The long-term goal of dollarizing the economy. Argentina has suffered from repeated currency crises and bouts of hyperinflation throughout its history due to excessive money printing by the central bank. To prevent such economic calamities from happening again, Milei advocated an ambitious plan to fully dollarize the Argentine economy. Dollarization would involve two key steps. First, all government debt and legal contracts would be re-denominated from pesos to US dollars. This would make it impossible for future administrations to default on debts by printing more pesos and devaluing them. Second, and more drastically, the Argentine peso would be completely replaced by the US dollar as a national currency. Dollars would circulate for all transactions instead of pesos. This dollarization would eliminate the central bank's ability to print money excessively. Milei has taken steps towards a dollarization of the economy, and thus far, he has devalued the peso by 54%, which narrows the gap between the official and market exchange rates. However, full dollarization is a complex process and requires substantial foreign reserves, which Argentina currently lacks. And quite interestingly, Milei has given up on this claim. How hilarious, considering that it was a major part of his campaigns. Number 3, maintaining political popularity to push through reforms. I told you earlier that I would talk about why this is important later. You see, in Argentina, what often happens is that politicians come into office promising reform, but either get voted out of office or give up when the approval ratings start going low. Now, Milei had the foresight that his bold reform agenda would face stiff opposition from vested interests. To overcome this, he aimed to retain strong public support, which would help him actually get things done. And so far, he has managed this through frequent rallies and fiery anti-establishment rhetoric. Let's look at the steps Milei has taken and see if they are truly the best choices to make. For his first goal, which is to reduce deficits, Milei was upfront in his inaugural address on December 10th. "Our country demands action, and immediate action," he said, saying that Argentina was at the brink of its biggest crisis in history. At that time, annual inflation stood at 161%, with 45% of the population living in poverty. Tackling such massive deficits inevitably requires deep spending cuts and austerity measures. However, slashing government expenditures so drastically also risks crippling key sectors and public services, which could lead to mass layoffs and even higher unemployment than what already exists. With Milei's coalition holding only 38 out of 257 seats in Congress, he lacks a majority to pass his controversial economic policies without cooperation from opposition parties. Reducing deficits is crucial, but doing so in an overly aggressive manner without considering the potential fallout could tip the economy into an unpredictable and potentially turbulent future. And Milei is doing everything possible to blame Congress for policy measures that have not yet been implemented. Milei's confrontational attitude and unwillingness to collaborate with opposition parties have hindered his ability to smoothly implement reforms. Without consensus, his minority in Congress will remain a roadblock. Dollarization itself has also proven trickier, as Argentina lacks the massive foreign reserves required to back replacing the peso with dollars. Argentina needs immense forex reserves to back removing the domestic currency entirely. However, local analysts estimate Argentina's net international reserves are as low as -$10 billion. This means the central bank has a higher foreign debt than the liquid reserves it holds. Argentina would need at least $50 billion in positive dollar reserves to realistically consider full dollarization and replace the peso outright. But does that even make sense? He's proposing to abolish the country's central bank, and that means monetary policy for Argentina would be set in Washington rather than Buenos Aires. Like we just saw, where would they get the money from? I mean, they could borrow from the IMF, but they are currently already the biggest borrower from the IMF. Finally, how popular has Milei remained? A study from Statista says that as of February 2024, more than half of the population in Argentina had a negative image of Javier Milei. The stats were based on a public poll, and if you've been listening to this video, it won't be hard to see why this is so. The Argentine president faces criticism for compromising on some key promises. His radical plans to dollarize completely and privatize most state firms have stalled amid legislative gridlock. Also, before becoming president, Javier Milei expressed criticism about trade with China, aligning himself with the United States, Israel, and the free world. He suggested that he would break ties with Argentina's main trading partners, including China, if elected. However, after assuming the presidency, Milei adopted a more pragmatic approach, as if he suddenly recognized the importance of China as Argentina's second largest trading partner and a major source of imports. He stated that trade relations with China would remain unchanged. He also decided not to alter an $18 billion currency swap with China. I think Milei is off to a good start with the economy. For example, there was a notable decrease in inflation in February, which fell more than expected to 13% monthly. However, one thing is certain, he cannot accomplish lasting change without collaboration and support from Congress. Milei will have to make compromises. While difficult, this is the only path to implementing durable reforms that put Argentina towards sustainable economic revival. Whether Milei can navigate these political obstacles and get congressional backing for his agenda remains to be seen. But Argentina's future prosperity may hinge on his ability to build coalitions and unite the country behind a coherent economic vision.